this hand. Okay. This is a video letter, maybe, if you want to call it, a video email to a group of people that do a weekly podcast that I really enjoy, and they're coming up on their 200th episode on Sunday, and today is Saturday, so tomorrow. And I just wanted to, perhaps this is the first time they've ever had somebody respond via YouTube to them. They have a Skype and email, of course, and I'll put all the information, of course, in the side. So basically it's three people. It's Rafe, Margaret, and Tim, and it's called the Weekly Blend Audio Show. And it's a podcast that I've been listening to now for probably 2.5 years. But it's been going, I believe, since 2005. It used to be on a website called CinemaBlend, which I still check out probably at least 2 or 3 times a week. And Rafe, in the past year, has parted ways with CinemaBlend and started his own website, which is called Widescreen Warrior. And, of course, all the links in the side. And but they've continued the Weekly Blend Audio Show, the podcast, which basically they record every Sunday in Rafe's basement, I think. And they're coming up on their 200th episode. So I wanted to talk a little bit about their podcast as a way of recommending it, and why I enjoy it so much, and then pose a question at the end of the vlog, because he asked for listeners to send in questions. So really quick, I'm a big movie geek. If you look at my Taisha Jason channel here, my main channel is about living in Japan and being a teacher, which is something I share in common with Rafe, who's also a teacher. And like Tim, I've been an employee at large corporate video chains, Blockbuster and Hollywood, and also independent video stores. What do I share in common with Margaret? Maybe we both like corn dogs. No, I don't know. We both like the Aliens movies, Aliens, etc., with Ripley. So what I was saying is my main channel is about teaching, but my side channel, Taisha Jason, which is where this will appear, I do a lot of videos where I talk about movies, movie reviews, and my DVD collection, etc. So basically, while I was living in Japan, especially, say, the last 2 years I was in Japan from, say, 2007 to 2009, I really started to enjoy the company of Rafe, Margaret, and Tim. What I would do is my kitchen and my living room in my Japanese apartment, which many of you have seen in my other vlogs, kind of is one big shared space. So I would put my laptop, open my laptop, turn on the podcast, which is always about an hour, and generally it was the thing that I would cook to. I would cook and prepare my meals while listening, so maybe it would take me 2 nights to listen to a typical 1-hour podcast. And it felt like, even though I wasn't part of the conversation in the sense that I was actually conversing with them, it felt like I was, it was just nice for me to hear English. And it certainly, I don't want to go so far as to say made me feel less lonely, but it was just sort of nice companionship for that 1 hour. I listened to a few other podcasts and got similar satisfaction from it, but I like the fact that they weren't very highfalutin or anything about their opinions. They feel like they know the subject well enough to talk about it, but certainly weren't trying to say that theirs was the only right opinion. And it's like any critics that you encounter, be it Roger Ebert or somebody at the pinnacle of their profession, down to the person on the web who you click on their video and they're talking about the latest Harry Potter movie, what have you. If you stick with them and get to know them as a person, you can tell what kind of movies they'll like and not like, and perhaps from that gauge how much you might like the video from their enjoyment or dislike of it. So it's not really for you to agree or disagree with their opinion necessarily. It's for you to gauge what your reaction might be from their reaction. And while I think, for instance, Tim likes kind of everything, and but I share some things in common, say, with Rafe, who, with the shaky cam, and, I dislike that, the quick cut editing, etc., etc. But for adults, for instance, one thing I disagree with is I think all three of them just like animated films way too much. And I'm not saying that Pixar films aren't glorious, etc., but they just give way too much leverage to animated films and overlook perhaps, other more deserving films. Anyway, this isn't the part for me to dissect what I do and don't like about the podcast. Like I said, it really meant a lot to me while I was in Japan. And so my question, I guess, is for the 200th episode, if you're going to answer some questions, is one of the interesting things about living in Japan and still being interested in Hollywood movies, etc., is how far removed you are from all the machinations that go on to try and get you to go see a movie, i.e. the television commercials, print ads, because I wasn't reading any American magazines. Basically, most of my information came from the web. And I think if you watch some of my other videos, you realize that the movies in Japan came out sometimes way after their American debut. So I would have plenty of time to read online feedback, etc. about films before I would spend what usually was $18 to go see a movie on the big screen in Japan. So the podcast was very good for me in that sense of letting me kind of have a heads up about what movies to, say, okay, I'll actually spend the $18 and drive the hour away in my rural town to go see it, or I'll wait and maybe just catch it on DVD. But not being influenced by all these other factors, you kind of start to just zone in on movies that you feel really are like quality films or things that you really want to see. And one of the things that they talk about in the podcast every week, right at the top of the podcast, is the weekend gross, the box office gross. And so this is a roundabout way of getting to my question, is why do you, Rafe, Margaret, and Tim, why do you care? Why do you care about how much money a movie makes? So what I found is that I know it's interesting, and I know it's some people like to play, armchair quarterback for football or hockey for you guys, armchair movie producer, movie mogul. But you guys give it such weight in the podcast and you discuss it in such terms like the shelf that it fell off of and, oh my God, it only made this much money and, it cost this much money and stuff. But why does any of that matter? Seriously, just step back for a moment and think, why do you obsess? Because you guys talk about this on the podcast a lot. Like whether this movie made 30 million or 40 million its opening weekend and whether this movie dropped off and, none of it matters to you and me unless you're a CEO of a movie studio or an agent, like an Entourage, or you have some financial stake in these films. Why do you care? Because 5 years from now, 10 years from now, can you tell me, for instance, how much money The Matrix made or how much money the opening weekend of James Cameron's Aliens was? No, of course you can't. And none of that matters. All that matters is how good the movies are. If you review books, etc., you don't talk about how much money a book made. You just talk about the book that you read. Why can't we, when we talk about movies, why does it matter? Why do we care? We don't own theaters. We don't own movie studios. So it boggles my mind that this matters to people so much in America now that I've come back. And when I was listening to your podcast. The only thing that matters is something like Transformers 2, which I think all of you agree is not, well, maybe Tim, I think, liked it, is not a very good movie, but Americans, especially young Americans, went out to see that movie a lot and paid, obviously went and saw it repeat times. So that's going to encourage more low-quality movies like Transformers 2 being made. So I understand that Paul Blart or whatever the hell that movie was that I wouldn't even see. If that makes $100 million, more movies like that might get made. But the only thing you and I can do about that as movie fans is either tell people if we saw it and we didn't like it, or, vote with our dollars. Go see a movie like Let the Right One In, probably one of my favorite movies that I've seen since coming back to America on Netflix. Or go see, a David Mamet film or some small independent film, or go see some movie that you really want to support and support it with your dollars that way, and possibly buy the DVD or something, because this obsession with the weekend gross, I mean, I don't even see why, for instance, you include it in the podcast at all. What does it have to do at all with the discussion of movies and going to the movies and enjoying movies? Because it just doesn't factor in for me. So that's my question. Congratulations again on 200 episodes. I look forward to listening to many more, and I'll see you around. Peace.